Thank you for joining us today to discuss global responses to COVID-19. We have three distinguished diplomats with us. They are career diplomats. Minister Maurizio Griganti is the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy of Italy in Washington. Ambassador Huang Ping is the Consul General of China in New York. And Director General Yunju Ko heads up the North American Affairs Bureau at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea in Seoul, where it must be very late in the evening. We are going to proceed alphabetically, and I'm going to invite Minister Griganti to make opening remarks. Minister Griganti, welcome.
Thank you very much, President Latif. Thank you for this invitation to this very important event. It's a great pleasure for me to be here to discuss about such a timely and important topic as the COVID-19 emergency. I would like to extend my greetings to my today's partners and colleagues, Director General Yunju Ko and Ambassador Huang Ping. Pleasure to be here with you. I would structure my presentation in three parts. First, to tell you about the Italian reaction to the pandemic, how we cope with it. Second, what we are doing at the international level. And third, the lessons learned from our perspective, of course. As you know well, Italy was one of the first countries hard hit by the pandemic. For sure, the first one in Europe, and we experienced a very high number of fatalities, of tragic losses since February. That's why my government had to take very drastic, painful measures, and yet to do this fast. So we enacted tough lockdown measures, which helped us to combat the virus, and entire production sectors were shut down for several weeks. I have to say at the beginning, this plan found resistance in some quarters, but pretty soon the population understood that this was the right way to go, and they reacted responsibly and with great discipline. Everybody did his best for the benefit and the safety of the whole community. We are very proud. I'm very proud of the reaction of my fellow citizens, which embraced very difficult measures and did it, in a true spirit of helping all their fellow nationals. Let me just spend a word about our heroes, those who were on the front line, the health professional, which really made great strides and helped to counter the spread and save countless lives. Everything we did in Italy was, of course, based on one priority, which was safeguarding people's health and their well-being. And we did it always in a very transparent way, which was, I would say, the pillar of our action, transparency within the country and also outside with our partners. And I can say today that we are, the fight is not won yet, but the situation today is much better. We have it's always too much, but still we have around 200 cases per day, and the trend is downward, is going down. And we were able to arrive at this point also, I have to say, thanks to the friendship and cooperation of a great number of countries, including those of my colleagues here today, South Korea and China, but also I would like to mention the United States, which demonstrated once again the great bond which is solid, I would say rock solid, between Italy and the United States. On April 10th, President Trump signed a Memorandum of Assistance to Italy. Since then, we are working with the administration to implement it. But it was not only the administration, it was the business community, NGOs, even private citizens were extremely generous, made great donations, and they helped us weather the storm. So since the beginning of May, we started a gradual reopening of the economy and of the country. Of course, doing that with all due precautions, because we want to avoid that the virus comes back. Let me say something about the economic measures that we implemented, because of course the first problem was to avoid that an health problem becomes a big economic problem. So the government took unprecedented measures for a total of 75 billion euros. This is one of the biggest recovery programs in Europe, aimed at supporting workers and families' income, strengthening the national health system, extending unemployment benefits, providing tax incentives for companies, facilitating access to bank credit. And recently the government approved a pact for export. You know that the Italian economy is very much export driven, so this is very important and a priority for us. Right now, the government is very busy in a wide-ranging consultation with all stakeholders, trying to figure out the best strategy for the future. We want to use the opportunity of the pandemic to start in a better way, to bring our economy to a better position compared where it was before the pandemic. And of course, all this is happening in the framework of a very lively and important discussion at the European level. There was last week a virtual meeting of the European Council on a new, very important package, so-called Next Generation EU, the recovery plan for Europe. And our hope is that that will be approved at the next meeting of the European Council in July, which will be the first European Council in person. So they will meet in Brussels, and that's of course necessary because you need to be there to make the necessary compromises to arrive at the end and a good deal for everybody. As I said, we are confident the Italian economy will recover and the recovery will accelerate in coming months. Let me just mention a few points to tell you why we are confident. Italy has a very low or non-existent external debt. We have a very low private debt, a very low corporate debt, of course, in comparison with our partners in Europe. And also the financial system is in a much better shape than it was before the previous financial crisis in 2008. So this is the picture of the Italian economy. Recently, there was an index which is quite important, prepared by A.T. Kearney, Foreign Direct Investment Confidence Index, which measures the attractiveness of countries for foreign direct investment. Italy fared well. We are satisfied with the 9th position. The US is the first, but we think that this is an important benchmark also for foreign investors. On the international scene, we have been very active from the very beginning, advocating the constitution of an international alliance for advancing the research and equitable distribution of a vaccine, and to fast-track efforts on treatments and diagnostics. We co-launched the ACT Accelerator, Access to COVID-19 Tools, and co-led the Coronavirus Global Response Pledging Conference, which was held at the beginning of May. My Prime Minister announced several hundred million euros contributions to sustain the global efforts in this field. So we are contributing to a number of multilateral organizations, including among them the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, Gavi. We are very focused also on the need to ensure the global immunization in developing and fragile countries all over the world, it's very important that they get equitable access to a vaccine. And in general, Italy will continue to play a very active role in the international fields in different venues. This year in the G7 under the US presidency, and in G20. Next year, we will hold the chairmanship of the G20. Would like to conclude with the lessons learned from our point of view. First and foremost, international cooperation and solidarity remain the milestones for overcoming the crisis. We are convinced that multilateralism is the cure to COVID-19. Together we are stronger. In this vein, it's very important in the era of globalization to maintain the supply chains integrated and operational. We saw disruptions at the beginning of the crisis. In this field, you remember the high competition for essential medical supplies, from gloves, masks, ventilators. We should absolutely avoid a repeat of that. And to avoid that, what is necessary among countries, among partners, is trust. Trust is really the currency, I would say, of lasting relationships. Always in this vein, we, as I said, we should make sure to invest and support research, distribution, and production to make sure that treatments and vaccines are available worldwide without discrimination. Another very important lesson is that testing and physical distancing measures have to be implemented as soon as possible because they help to flatten the curve and reduce the overall outbreak. And we should always work and implement these measures based on science and data. Science and data should always come first. So, to sum up, let me just end with a positive note. This is a time of uncertainty, and in uncertainty, people tend to be pessimistic and make dire predictions. You can read every day tons of op-eds which have a very pessimistic view on international relations, on the inward nationalistic agendas. I think we should be take caution for a moment, be more positive, and try all the best, all of us, to transform this crisis into an opportunity for growth and well-being. This is for sure a transformational time, so we should try to focus in the future on key areas, which it was very clear in this crisis are key: energy, green transition, and digital economy. Thank you very much. And again, congratulations for this very good initiative. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Griganti, for your insightful remarks. Ambassador Huang, I'd like to invite you to make your opening remarks.
So, President Latif, thank you very much. Minister Griganti, and also Director General Yong Jun Ko. And it is my great honor to join this conference. I want to thank the Foreign Policy Association for the kind invitation. China has had a close cooperation with both Italy and the Republic of Korea during the COVID-19 pandemic. The remarks of the honorable two guests have much to, I think, to resonate with mine. I hope my sharing of the Chinese government's response to the pandemic can also be helpful to our audiences. Through painstaking efforts, China has made important progress in containing the spread of COVID-19. It is well on the way right now in resuming business, market and school, and fully restore social and economic order. But the virus is still spreading around the world, and there are still sporadic cases in China, as we have seen in Beijing in the past week. So given the current situation, our President Xi Jinping has called the country to remain vigilant, allowing not the slightest let up in preventing case import and domestic resurgence. China will continue to adopt a factual, open, and transparent approach in dealing with COVID-19. Any infection, once detected, will be promptly handled. Early this month, China released a white paper on its fight against COVID-19, a record of the country's hard fight at home and its participation in the global cooperation. I would refer you to the white paper for specific statistics and cases. What I want to share with you today is the three guiding principles of China's response to this pandemic. The first is to make people's lives our top priority. The right to life and health is the most basic human right. Between economic growth and the human lives, China has chosen the latter without any hesitation. To save lives, a number of cities went under lockdown. Daily life and work have been greatly affected, and the economy posted negative growth in the first quarter of this year. However, life is valuable, life is invaluable, and this is the price we must pay, and the price worth paying. As of May 31st, a total of 162.4 billion RMB, which is 23.2 billion US dollars, had been allocated by governments to all levels to fight against the virus, to implement the policy of ensuring that all those in need are tested, isolated, hospitalized, and treated. This demonstrates a cure rate of 94.3% and a fatality rate of 5.6%. In Hubei province, the epicenter of China, more than 3,000 patients over the age of 80, including 7 centenarians, have been cured, with many of them brought back from the verge of death. As long as there was infection, we would never let it go. As long as there was the slightest hope, doctors would never give up. This has been our goal and will continue to guide us forward. The second is to have science lead our way in this fight. The new virus comes from nature. It has yet been fully understood by humans. As the first nation to report infection, China has been through a process from understanding what it was to making effective responses. But we have had science lead our way to avoid the pandemic while dealing with the unknown, as well as complacency when the virus is contained at the moment. A group of lovely medical experts have been well recognized by the Chinese public, like Dr. Fauci in America. They are respected and liked by the whole nation. The government values and gives full support to scientists and the public health experts. With a growing body of knowledge of this virus, China has updated 5 times its prevention and control protocol, developed 6 work plans on psychological counseling for people affected by COVID-19, and 50 specific technical guidelines. All of this has ensured that China's prevention and control efforts are more targeted and science-based. And the third is to stress efficiency as an overarching goal. Infectious diseases must be handled swiftly and decisively. Wuhan built 2 specific hospitals within 15 days, which admitted very large numbers of patients who were seriously ill. More importantly, the city government mobilized resources to repurpose stadiums and exhibition centers into 16 temporary treatment centers with 14,000 beds. These centers admitted all confirmed mild case for treatment, which helped reduce community transmission and prevent mild cases from worsening. They played a key role in turning around the situation where hospitals got completely overwhelmed. I've noted that many cities in the United States had adopted a similar strategy. For example, the New York City turned the Javits Center into a temporary hospital for treating mild cases. This testifies that our anti-pandemic efforts, however differentiated, all need to fall back on common sense. The question is whether we can act quickly and follow through our policies consistently. Ladies and gentlemen, while maintaining COVID-19 response on an ongoing basis, China has put life and work back to normal at a faster pace. Given the uncertainty of the global pandemic, the trade and the economic situation, China has decided not to set a specific growth target this year. In the meantime, China has formulated a series of goals and tasks in 6 key areas closely connected with economic development, including job, basic living needs, operations of market entities, food and energy security, stable industrial and supply chains, and the normal functioning of primary level governments. Putting protections in place in the 6 key areas will help us hold the foundation of China's economy. To that end, we have adopted a series of policy measures. In terms of fiscal policy, China will increase fiscal deficit and issue government bond for COVID-19 control with 1 trillion RMB yuan for each. This is to provide vital relief for businesses and the people's livelihoods. Additionally, we will cut taxes and the fees by more than 2.5 trillion yuan for businesses throughout the year. With monetary policy, China will increase money supply and aggregate financing. We will take steps to ensure enterprises can secure loans more easily and promote a steady reduction of interest rates. With respect to higher standard opening up, the negative list for foreign investment will be significantly shortened, while a negative list will also be drawn up for cross-border trading services. Both aim to promote liberalization and the facilitation of trade and investment. With regard to boosting domestic demand, China expected to enhance the residents' consumption capacity by supporting jobs and increasing income. This year, 3.75 trillion yuan of special local government bonds will be issued, and 600 billion yuan will be earmarked for investment in the central government's budget. Priority will be given to new infrastructure, the new urbanization initiatives, and major transportation and water conservancy projects. These measures have delivered initial results. According to the latest release of China's National Bureau of Statistics, the country's industrial output expanded by 4.4% year-on-year in May. Meanwhile, service production index resumed positive for the first time since the epidemic started and grew by 1% on the yearly basis. Retail sales, a gauge of consumption, dropped by 2.8% year-on-year, but the contraction narrowed by 4.7 percentage points from April's decline. Overall, China's economy is well on track of recovery and gaining more momentum. The World Bank's outlook shows China will mark the only positive growth among major economies this year. I believe the resilience of China's economy will overcome short-term hardships and keep forging ahead in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic crisis arising thereafter have posed unprecedented challenges to mankind. As a community with a shared future, countries can only tide over the crisis by working side by side. In his statement at the 73rd World Health Assembly, President Xi proposed that countries need to move as fast as possible to curb the global spread of the virus, improve the governance system for public health security, step up international macroeconomic policy coordination, and restore growth of the world economy. China has been actively strengthening global response to the pandemic. Not long ago, China and African nations held the extraordinary China-Africa Summit on solidarity against the COVID-19. President Xi proposed a series of measures in supporting containment of the virus on the African continent, as well as enhancing mutual support in economic and social development. These efforts have been well received by parties of the summit. As the two largest economies, China and the United States shoulder significant responsibilities in coping with transnational threats such as the pandemic. The two countries need to shoulder differences and work cooperatively. On that note, I wish American society can be more forthcoming in supporting this bilateral cooperation of global significance. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Huang, for your informative remarks. Director General Ko, thank you for joining us from Seoul. Could I ask you to make your opening remarks?
Thank you, President Royal Latif, and it's great to see you again over the video. And then thank you for the Ambassador Huang and the DCM Greg in Washington. I'm very honored to have this meeting with you, two distinguished guests. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to share the Korea's experience on responding to the COVID-19. I think the Korea's responses to the COVID-19 is twofold, as all the other countries responded likewise. One is about the health crisis, and the other is about the economic, the fallout triggered by the COVID-19. So let me first deal with the health crisis, how the Korea has responded to the health crisis triggered by the COVID-19. So now I think everybody in the world speaks highly of the Korea's effective response to the COVID-19. I think what makes Korea successful in addressing the COVID-19. Let me tell you three factors. First, I think what we did is so-called 3 T's. So T's means like testing and tracing and treatment. How we apply these 3 T's to people is based on 3 principles, which are openness and transparency and democracy. So what is meant by the openness? We keep the borders open and we keep the society open. There are no entry restrictions from overseas and there are no lockdowns in the city. For transparency, we share all information on COVID-19 related cases and measures taken. For democracy, we encouraged people's voluntary civic engagement and participation to prevent the virus from spreading. The second factor, I think, is that Korea has an affordable universal healthcare system, which gives people easy access to medical services and technologies. This efficient public healthcare system played a pivotal role in stemming the spread of the virus by providing tests and treatments at the early stage. Third factor is, I think, is about the humanitarian tradition in Korean society. While respecting the individual liberty, the Korean government has emphasized the importance of communal interest of individual one for the prevention of the virus. Korean citizens faithfully followed personal hygiene guidelines, such as wearing masks, complying with self-quarantine measures, and maintaining social distance. So as a result, without resorting to lockdowns or other large-scale restrictions, Korean government managed to contain COVID-19. We have now entered the stabilization phase, and starting from May 6th, social distancing has transitioned to more softened form of distancing in daily life. Schools reopened June 8th. Though the COVID-19 is still here in Seoul, in Korea, we can say that we are controlling the virus. This is what the Korean government's done to the responding to the health crisis. So let me turn to the response to the economic fallout. As you know, global restrictions on movement of goods and materials shocked both the demand and the supply sides of the economy at the same time, which intensified the stagnation of the real economy. This is a unique feature of the economic difficulties, unlike the past economic crisis, which is mainly triggered by either demand side shock or supply side shock only. So this is a totally different phenomenon that we are having for the economic crisis, because we have both sides of the demand, and supply shock is taking place at the same time. This is a great challenge to us. So what we did as a government to respond to the economic fallout, first of all, Korean government established emergency leadership decision-making structure to effectively address the economic crisis. Korean government set up the emergency economic cabinet chaired by the President Moon, and also operated the central response headquarters on economic emergency, which is a pan-governmental body chaired by Deputy Prime Minister. With this emergency decision-making process, rapid and bold physical measures were adopted. So far, Korean government already implemented 2 stimulus packages, which is account for around $20 billion. And in that package, we distributed emergency relief payments to all households, and also provided financial support to small businesses, and also supported the implementation of the employment maintaining measures. Now, Korean government is taking third stimulus packages, which accounts for $29 billion, which is currently under National Assembly consideration. So the addressing the Korean economic problem, I can tell you that there are 3 factors that we are facing some problem. One is the domestic demand. In terms of domestic demand, private consumption declined 6.4% in the first quarter of this year compared to the previous quarter, and consumer sentiment also deteriorated rapidly to the lowest level since the global financial crisis. And in terms of employment, the number of jobs in April fell by around 400,000 from a year ago, which was the sharpest drop since the February 1999. And lastly, in terms of export, Korea's export continued to decrease significantly for the second month in May as a result of border restrictions of the United States, Europe, and other key countries. Overall, the amount of export has declined 6.4% in April and 23.7% in May compared to the same month the year before. So now facing this economic crisis, as I mentioned, we had the 3 times the economic stimulus packages. Also, we set up the national development strategy, which is called Digital New Deal, and the Green New Deal, which is called kind of a New Deal. We are pursuing the Digital New Deal to spearhead a forward-looking innovative economy. We will push ahead with the accelerated transition to the digital economy by extensively digitalizing the national infrastructure, while fostering the data network and artificial intelligence ecosystems and non-face-to-face industries. This is one of the national development strategies to deal with the COVID-19 economic crisis in terms of the digitalization of the economy. And second one is, we call it the Green New Deal, which is about the it plans to pave the way forward sustainable growth through the Green New Deal. We will create new markets, industries, and jobs while actively responding to climate change as a responsible member of the international community. Let me stop here, and I look forward to the following discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director General Ko, for those very thorough remarks. I'm going to ask a general question and see if we can elicit a response from each of you. And the question is, what precautions are your governments taking to prevent a second wave of this COVID-19 pandemic? There's much speculation that there could be a second wave, and the experience in 1918 with the last coronavirus pandemic was that the second wave was worse than the first. Are your governments actively putting in place measures to anticipate and preempt such a development? And maybe I can start with you, Director General Ko.
I think as you know, in the Korean case, we had the spike of the confirmed cases in February and March, and then after since April, we are managed going down the numbers of the confirmed cases to manageable level. So nowadays, around for last 1 week, we have every day around 40 to 50. The most cases around the 50 every day confirmed cases. That is still is not still is not the real number, but we think that is a kind of manageable number. We think. So I think this virus is very much tricky. It's really hard to erase all the stringent with the stringent measures. So I mean the most important thing is we have to keep the prevention measures going over without any complacence mind. So this is very important. So Korean government is continue to have every day the meeting, pan-governmental, the crisis management body chaired by the Prime Minister. We have every day meeting to check out the current situation, and then we check out all the cases and then the trends, and then also we are still having, while we are orders open, we are tracking down all the cases coming from overseas, and we are carefully managing what causes the spread and what the clusters we have. So I believe to prevent the second wave, I think we have to keep going with the stringent prevention measures while having the principles that the openness as our case, transparency, and the democracy, and those are principles we held in strongly. We have to keep going with without the complacency spirit.
Thank you, Director General Ko. Ambassador Huang, what precautions is your government taking to prevent a second wave?
Yes, I think we have been hit very hard, and we don't want to see a second wave occur again. We launched this as a people's war, which means it's not a war for the government. It's not a war for just organizations. It's a war for everybody. So everybody must participate actively in the prevention. So our response to the virus has been maintaining on a kind of regular basis. Before we could get the vaccine and the drugs, I think we have to live with this virus for a while, maybe sometime, who knows. So on people's side, we stress the importance of wearing masks, avoid unnecessary gatherings, keep good ventilation, disinfection, and personal hygiene, and all those. We encourage people to do all of this. But from the government, which is a lot more important, we have to implement solidly of a policy of early detection, rapid handling, accurate control, and effective treatment. Meanwhile, testing is very important. So the testing range will also be further expanded. As we know, I mentioned in my speech that we published a guideline based on all the experiences we have gained in the past 4 months. We launched this guideline to guide the people working together with the government to prevent this second wave of breakout. I think it could be quite effective.
Thank you, Ambassador Huang. May I turn to Minister Griganti to answer this question?
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, this is a very, I would say, very important question, because of course, after what we saw in the recent month, our main goal is to avoid it, that it happens again, of course. I mean, in our case, the reopening of the economy of the country was, as I said, very gradual, and also based on the measures which colleagues were mentioning, which are very important. So, I mean, we approved the reopening of retail stores, for example, restaurants, public gatherings, but on the basis of very strict criteria and rules based on social distancing, on wearing masks, on personal hygiene. This is, I mean, everything is very important. People are following the rules. The government is sparing no effort to send the right message to people that we have to be very careful. And of course, tracing and testing, this is key. I mean, using these measures, we were able to stem the first wave. So we think this is the right path. We should, I mean, continue. Hopefully, we'll be able to stem the virus until we get a vaccine, which will be, of course, the solution to this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Minister Griganti. Maybe I can begin with you with the next question, which is, will further financial stimulus be necessary for Italy's economy to be restored to its pre-pandemic condition?
Well, this is also a very, I would say, very important question. Again, a very important issue. I mean, the answer is that we don't know yet. We do hope that the stimuli we implemented will be sufficient. I said that we enacted one of the most important economic plans in Europe. We are ready to do more. We are, of course, counting on the European response, as I said, and that will come for sure, and it will be very important. And by the way, it will be also very important for the process of European integration, because it will show that faced with an unprecedented crisis, Europe is able to stick together and to react as one. But of course, we are very careful watching the situation. According to the economic forecast of the government of IMF, this year we will have quite a fall in production, but we should recoup most of it next year, hopefully. A big part of the Italian economic recovery will be done also through of course, exchanges. As I said, we are an open, export-driven economy. And in that regard, exchanges with other countries, including tourism, will be extremely important. So we reopened our borders along with our European partners in mid-June. We are now coordinating in Brussels at the European level to see how to reopen to extra-European countries. This will be also a very important piece in this, and we hope to be able to do it as soon as possible, of course, when conditions will allow.
Thank you, Minister Giganti. Ambassador Huang, you described how your government has made extraordinary efforts to stimulate the Chinese economy. Do you think further stimulus will be necessary to restore the Chinese economy to its pre-pandemic condition?
Yes, we've been trying to use this stimulus to reboost this economy. But as Premier Li Keqiang said, we're not going to flood China's economy with liquidity. It's easy to raise money, but to spend it well is another question. So you have to use caution, making sure that the money you raised will be spent to your target, to spend that money on a precisely way to make sure, you know, they hit the target. Right now, I mentioned the fiscal deficit and also the fund. We're going to raise $1 trillion or no, 1 trillion RMB. Probably we're going to do a little bit more of that. But I think the most important thing right now is to have this mechanism established to make sure that you know, the money will be channeled to the primary level government to make sure that the small business and the people in difficulty will be benefited from all those. And one thing I think, you know, you can always raise the money, but you need a mechanism established to make sure the money is well spent. I think that's a lot more important than just use a lot of stimulus to flood the economy.
Thank you, Ambassador Huang. May I turn to Director General Ko to address whether the Korean government is going to engage in further financial stimulus for its economy.
I think the you know, as I told you before in the opening remarks, I mean, this the economic crisis is quite different from the previous one. Previous one is that crisis triggered by either, you know, demand shock or the supply side shock. But this crisis is coming from both sides, demand and supply shock all together at the same time. So the impact on the economy is very much huge. So that's why I think the we need you know, the tremendous or you know above the common sense level of the economic stimulus to address this kind of a crisis. So you know, in compared with the past financial crisis, usually, you know, past crisis begin from the financial sector first, and then give a very much negative impact on the real economy. But this crisis, vice versa, is coming from the just you know, giving a lot of negative impact on the real economy, and then that real economy, the invested real economy, provide very much negative impact on the financial, you know, the sector. So I mean, so we have to deal with the this crisis very much differently. So this requires a rapid and the strong, you know, governmental intervention in the economy to address the crisis. So I mean, so far Korea, we had the you know, 2 economic stimulus packages. We spent $20 billion. This is a kind of additional budgeting from government for this year. And also we are having the third budgeting, which account for $29 billion. So I don't know. I mean, this stops the preventing the economy further from downside down going going down. So I mean, if we need a further economic stimulus, then we have to do that. Otherwise, we cannot effectively address the current crisis, because the crisis is quite different from the previous one and very much severe. So this is my response.
Thank you very much, Director General Ko. Let me go back to Minister Griganti, who emphasized in his opening remarks the importance of cooperation going forward in the face of these kinds of crises. Minister Griganti, what is your appraisal of the EU's response to the COVID-19 crisis? I know there's been some public reports that the public in Italy was rather disappointed in how the EU came forward to assist in the midst of the COVID crisis in Italy.
Yeah, I mean, this is true. At the beginning of the crisis, where we were really, hit by this storm, and as I said, we were basically the first country to be hit hard in Europe. Till then, it was confined to Asia, and so nobody really thought could come with such a strength to Europe. And the first reaction was a general reaction of, I would say, surprise all over the continent. And the first reactions were also, competition among countries to get the essential medical supplies. We discovered a lot of things in that first phase. And for a moment, it looked like, Italy was the only country which was concerned by this for a few weeks. So people, immediately were looking for assistance and help from our closest and traditional partners. It took some time to come, basically for all of us to realize what was happening. But then the help came, I would say, first of all, with words, with the public statements of support by the European institutions, by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, by the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, and also, most importantly, from the President of the European Central Bank, which basically said we are going to help and to do everything we can to help all European countries which are in need now because of this shock. So I would say that the Italian public realized very soon that aid and solidarity were there and were coming from our European friends, as they came from a lot of other countries. So you're right. There was this moment at the beginning, but then it was went definitely away. And as I said again, now actually the crisis. It's difficult to say that now, but maybe in 1 year's time, we will be able to look back and say, look, this crisis was another point in time where the European Union was able to grow. Traditionally, the European Union has grown through crisis, through difficult moments, because in the end, the solutions which were found were solutions which increased the coordination and integration. I'm personally convinced this will be the case again this time. We'll see about that. But anyway, I would say that now there is a strong trust towards Europe and our European friends in Italy. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Griganti. Ambassador Huang, in your view, how has this pandemic affected international relations? Has it brought about more cooperation among countries or less? And how has this pandemic affected your country's Belt and Road Initiative?
Well, I think this pandemic has again reminded everybody that we live in the same earth, and this the whole earth, all the countries on earth belongs to one village. Nobody can just stay away from this. And so we need to strengthen this cooperation. We actually don't have many choices. You want to stay away, it's not possible. Now the pandemic is everywhere. So the only way is to strengthen the international cooperation and working together to find a way out. I think that's the only way. When China was hit at the beginning, we got lots of help from the international community. Actually, 170 countries and 50 international organizations helped China by donating the things we need and all expressing this solidarity, these messages, which encourage us to stay solid. And we cherish this. We value this cooperation relationship we have built. So right now we are out of this first outbreak, and we are doing everything we can to help other countries hit by this pandemic. Up to now, we have sent like 29 medical expert teams to 27 countries and offered assistance to 150 countries in different ways. And we are going to continue to do this. Not long ago, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, President Xi has said that China is working with all the countries, to develop this vaccine and drug. Once we got this vaccine, it's going to be a global public product. Everybody is going to have that, if we could, have that. So I think this is a very strong message that we would like to cooperate with all the countries and working together to fight this pandemic. China and the US, we are also working very closely in kind of, the fight this pandemic. We could not forget the support we got in the first phase one, I should say, when China was hit. We got a lot of help from American companies, people here. Now we are doing everything we can to show our hospitality in return. And as a Consul General here, I personally has involved myself in all the ways, to help all the 10 states in my consul district to fight against this coronaviruses, in terms of helping those states for the procurement of those PPEs in China, and also mobilizing all the resources I could have to have more donations of those PPE masks, goggles, and everything, and to help them ship as quickly as possible by doing the clearance of the customs and all those things. And we've been doing a lot of things together. So this is give me this encouragement that although we don't see everything eye to eye, right? We don't agree on everything, but in terms of fighting this pandemic, we need to work together. I think that's the only choice we have. As for the Belt and Road Initiative, I think the same thing. China has been doing everything we can to help all the countries. There are many countries from Africa and poor countries. They are not well equipped in fighting this coronaviruses. So we will do everything we can by sending expert teams and providing all those PPEs and all those things. In general, we'll do all the things we can to strengthen this international cooperation. And I believe that's the only way we can get a way out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Huang. May I turn to Director General Ko to give us his views on how this pandemic has affected the international climate. And I'm very curious because we haven't heard much about coronavirus infection rates in North Korea. Has it had any impact on your relations with North Korea?
I think the case of the coronavirus, the reported from North Korea. I mean, their official response is there is no one is confirmed. That is their official response. So we don't know exactly what kind of situation they are having regarding the COVID-19 cases. And then, but we know that all rural society has suffering from the COVID-19. So we expect that North Korea also has some problem dealing with those the pandemic. So we propose all the assistance, the willingness of the assisting the North Korea through the cooperative project or cooperation to deal with address the COVID-19. But we are having no response from North Korea whatsoever. But but I believe the COVID-19, those cases are can be kind of an instrument which they connect the South Korea and North Korea for further dialogue as a kind of medium to pursue to engagement between North and South Korea. So I mean, we are, still remains, firm to be ready with the, having a, constructive dialogue for economic cooperation, and also the, cooperative, the project dealing with the COVID-19. So we'd like to take advantage of this kind of crisis for the opportunities to bridge the gap between North Korea and South Korea. And then I believe the international, the relations, the climate for the outbreak of COVID-19. I think we have to humbly recognize that this crisis, this COVID-19 crisis, must be overcome through the international cooperation, not international competition. So I think that is kind of a starting point to address and solve the COVID-19 globally, is that we humbly recognize this crisis should be overcome through the international cooperation. So based on that, I think as I mentioned the opening remarks, everybody speaks highly of the Korean effective response to the COVID-19. So I think in that sense, Korea has some convening power to bring the international community, including the United States and China, to the platform where we can candidly discuss to how to deal with the COVID-19 issue and the problems. So we are ready to play a kind of a role in facilitating international cooperation to address the COVID-19. This is I mean the platform that we are looking for. And also I mean, as you mentioned, with regard to North Korea, I think this crisis can be a medium for us to take advantage for the opportunities to bridge the gap between North Korea and the South Korea. The kind of more like the mutual interest of the addressing the pandemic. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Director General Ko. Gentlemen, we have reached the end of our hour. I want to thank you very much for joining us today. You have shed light on a very important set of issues, and we are very grateful for your engaging in this wide-ranging discussion. So Minister Griganti, Ambassador Huang, Director General Ko, thank you very much for joining us today.